What is going on? It is 12 noon on Wednesday, which means it's time for this week's episode. Actually, no, it's not Wednesday, it's Friday. I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore. When you get busy, that starts to happen. So it's Friday, it's 12 noon. We're here to help you understand how to take your real estate business to the next level. And one of the most important skills of a real estate professional, whether this is a sales associate, a broker, anybody really dealing in real estate, and honestly, this is a skill that people value everywhere, not just in real estate, and that's negotiation. And specifically, people want to be good at negotiation because they want to be able to win negotiations. And so that's what we're going to be breaking down today, how it is that you approach a situation of negotiation. How it is that you prepare yourself, how it is that you carry yourself through that negotiation, and then what those repercussions are after this negotiation. But going through this process that we're going to lay out today really helps streamline this endeavor, because it gives you steps of what to do next, because you have an overall understanding of what it is that you're trying to do. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, negotiation, how you could use negotiation to grow your real estate business. What are some negotiation tips and skills? If you guys have questions, maybe you've got some negotiation tips, share those in the comments with us. I'm John Christopher. You're watching State of Real Estate.
You are watching
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Christopher. This show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every single Friday, as well as Wednesdays. Wednesdays, we do a show called Ask the Instructor, and that's where we're talking about more technical topics, maybe some stuff that might be on your exam, but also things that you see in the real world and understanding them better. But there's only so much technical knowledge that'll get you so far without what they typically call soft skills. So negotiation, I would absolutely refer to as more of a soft skill. A soft skill isn't quite as technical as a hard skill. And the soft skills are going to rely a lot more on your own professional development, on your own communication skills, because without those, this will be more difficult. So that's always going to form a strong foundation for any future negotiation, is if you're a good communicator. And now, what if you're not a good communicator? It's okay. We all are born not knowing how to talk. So we all are born not knowing how to effectively communicate. But then what happens? We learn over time. Now, sometimes we stop learning, maybe because school ends, or maybe because we feel like we've learned enough. But if we really kind of take every moment, every opportunity, every situation we find ourselves in as an opportunity to learn how to build our business better, if you take that approach, what it is that you're putting in will quickly pay off much faster. So let's talk more about, again, negotiation. And overall negotiation can be thought of in a lot of ways just like a sale process, because really in a negotiation, your side of the argument, at least, is that you're correct to some degree, that you're right about something and the other person has maybe some sort of disagreement. This could be overpriced. So maybe, for example, we're negotiating our commission on a listing agreement. Maybe we're negotiating the price on a property on behalf of a buyer. A lot of these same factors, whatever type of negotiation, we want to ask a lot of these same questions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not just about what it is that we want. Because if it was solely about what we want, we wouldn't have to do anything with negotiation, because if it was just about what we want, well then, what do we have to consider the other side for? So ultimately, you want to try to take the third-party perspective. and try to disconnect yourself to a certain degree and understand where both sides are ultimately coming from. Now, this is just what you're doing to prepare yourself for this situation. So maybe you're going into a listing appointment and you know that it's a possibility that the seller might bring up the question of, would you be willing to do your services for less? Would you be willing to take a lower commission rate? Would you be willing to whatever? And that's typical with any transaction, because remember, a seller always wants the highest price and a buyer always wants the lowest price. That's called an arm's length transaction. You learn about that in your real estate course. But it means we're coming from these opposing viewpoints. So if we don't validate this opposing viewpoint, we're never going to find that common ground. And it starts by us just trying to understand this. Now, there's only so much it is that we can do as an outsider looking in, trying to understand the other side, the other perspective. So ideally, what it is that you want to try to do as soon as you can is fact-finding, due diligence, you really want to try to figure out as much as possible, but not about you. So if this is you, and this is, I don't know what we're going to call this other party that we're negotiating with here. Let's say it's a client, maybe. Maybe we're negotiating on a listing. We're trying to get them, we'll go back to that listing example. We're trying to earn business with a client, a potential seller, to get them to list the property with us. We already know where we're coming from. We already understand that. We already know what we know because we are we. So we don't need to worry about us. We already have us figured out to a certain degree at least. But this, we might be quick to make certain assumptions about our clients, but ultimately we really don't know our clients until we get them to start to open up to us. And that's not just about asking questions. It's about getting answers. And sometimes it's not about just getting answers, it's about getting the real answers. And that is what's going to ultimately unlock the doors. So, has anybody ever done one of those little escape room things or had to do one of those little puzzles or something like that where you can't even get to step 2 until you solve step 1? Now, what's going to be step 2 in the negotiation? Well, step 1 ultimately is your due diligence and your fact-finding, trying to gather as much information as possible and ultimately getting this information directly from the source. So you're not kind of just making assumptions, you're not just thinking they think this way based on what you think, because remember, this is not about you. This is about getting to know them, getting to understand them, getting them to open up to you. So doing fact-finding, doing your due diligence. And now, this again can involve other things that don't necessarily directly involve your client. Obviously, you'll want to come to the table prepared with, what it is that you're doing for your client. But look, negotiation isn't about selling. Negotiation has to deal more with closing. And sales and closing are very different activities. They're often grouped together and lumped together in one and just thought of as sales. So a good example of what sales is getting a client to fall in love with a property. A good idea of what closing is holding their hand through that transaction that's going to be very bumpy in a lot of cases. What makes the transaction bumpy? So many things. That's what we're there to do once we help them fall in love with the property. And ultimately, what's important when we're trying to close is the logic. Emotionally, they may love this property, they fall in love with it. Sales, again, it's a very emotional type of thing. But somebody might be sold on something, but not closed on something. That's exactly how real estate works when you think about it. A house technically is sold when we have a contract that's outside of our contingency periods. Once we go past all of our inspection periods, contingency periods, and that buyer is locked into that contract at this point, that house is as good as sold. It basically is sold, but it's not closed. The transaction is not settled. So if we want to ultimately take our clients through this whole process, we have to be experts at negotiation. To be able to get our client initially even in that contract, set aside the agreement we're trying to make with a seller we've been referencing, and maybe we're also negotiating on behalf of a buyer. So let's talk about the fact-finding and due diligence when we're negotiating on behalf of a buyer. So we want to find out what our client knows, because to a certain degree, our client, we need to know what page they're on. Do they have some ideas in their head that are maybe not going to help us with this negotiation? And what are those? But then at the same time, we want to use this same idea on what is this seller really wanting. We could always say a higher price. You know, people will usually never say no to a higher price unless there's some more compelling factor than just the price. So to give you a great example of this here, of where, you know, it might not just be about the price. Let's say you've got two offers. You know, properties right now, there might be 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 offers on them. But let's just say we've got two here. We've got two offers, one for $400,000 and one for $450,000. Now, if all we have are these two contracts, these two offers for $400,000 and $450,000, and that's basically the only difference is just the dollar amount, why would you pick the lower priced one? If the only difference is the dollar amount, of course you'll pick the higher priced offer. But here's the thing, it's not just about the price. Because this offer, price, yes, that's usually the first thing people are looking at. Okay, how much are they offering? But now what are the terms? How are they going to pay for this property? Because maybe that $400,000 offer is cash, while that $450,000 offer is contingent upon financing. And when I use that word contingent, that means it's relying on financing. So going back to doing our fact finding, our due diligence, trying to find out everything it is that we can about this seller. You know, if this isn't our client, there's only so much it is that we might be able to find out or might know. We might not know much at all. And maybe, again, we're maybe only making assumptions here. And even if it is our client, depending on the type of relationship you may have with them, if you're also working with the other side of the transaction, there's certain things you must maintain under limited confidentiality. But we still want to try to find out this information so we can create the most compelling offer. Because it's not just about the price. It's about what do they want. You know, somebody who ultimately maybe is listing their property at a really high price because they don't really need to sell, they're not going to be highly motivated for a quick closing. So that's, if you see all these we buy houses, get an instant offer on your home, go to thiswebsite.com and get cash for your house today, or all these little schemes that are out there for we'll buy your house super quick for cash in your pocket. The thing they usually don't tell you is they pay below market value. They pay below market value for the convenience of taking time out of the equation. Now, for the majority of people, most people don't want to take that hit on the price for time. But there's a lot of people out there that the time is more important than the money. And if you're able to identify that in a negotiation, if you identify that time is a compelling factor, now what are some things you could do to identify that time's a compelling factor? Maybe this property's been listed on the market for a while. And especially in a market like today, if it's still on the market after a week or 2 weeks, it's all right, well, what's wrong with it? How overpriced is it? Those are the thoughts that are going through people's heads, because if it's competitively priced, it usually goes under contract, maybe even that same weekend that it gets listed, if not within a week. And depending on the market, it sometimes is longer than that for the average or normal. But whenever we see properties still on the market past the average or normal amount of time they would be on the market, that's where, again, we've got real indicators that, again, a few things could be happening. Most likely it's related to the pricing of the property, that the property's probably priced a little bit too high. Because, believe it or not, you price a property too high, people won't even want to waste their time looking at it. If they see that the price is up here, you're alienating a large audience if you really know you're going to sell down here, because the people that would afford down here, maybe they're not even wasting their time up here, especially in a market like we have today where people are paying above asking price for the property. So see how many factors it is that you really kind of weigh in here. And ultimately what you're trying to do in all this fact finding and all this due diligence is you're trying to prioritize. Because too often negotiations get caught up in back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth over who's right and who's wrong, when ultimately what we're trying to do is get to a solution. And if we don't prioritize what's important, we're going to waste a lot of time dealing with things that are, again, more emotional things and not so much the logical things that we need to make decisions on. And so that's why we need to take this due diligence, this fact-finding, any information it is that we've gathered, and try to prioritize that as much as possible. What is most important to this seller when we're submitting an offer on behalf of a buyer? Or we go back to the situation where we're trying to get a listing from a seller. So again, let's switch back to working with a seller, trying to get a listing. We're meeting with a seller at their home. They're showing us their property. And when we want to go on one of these listing appointments, typically, you don't want to just go sit down straight talking numbers. If this is the first time you've ever been at the property, how do they expect you to be an expert if you didn't even look at the property? How do you know? How do you know about this, or how do you know about that? And look, between you and me, a lot of these things sellers don't do anything to the value. Sometimes they actually hurt the value more than they help the value. But if we don't give them the time to listen to what it is they have to say and validate their side of the argument, we already know what we know. And if we just try to push what we know on our client without finding out what they know, we won't know how to effectively communicate our information to them. So it's very important that we find out what's important to them. And again, we prioritize. Maybe they're going over all these little things here and there and this and that they've done to the property. Oh, that's great, that's fantastic, that's okay. And we're thinking in our head, oh my God, I'm hoping he's not thinking he's going to get the money back for all these little things about this, about that, about this. And he's already shown me the swimming pool and the imported hardwood floors and all these things. So us being a professional, past experience might tell us, oh no, this seller's getting ready to really try to sell why their home is worth all this money, and it's not. So that might be something it is that we're seeing, but then we do the fact finding, the due diligence, they tell us all about the property, and then maybe we sit down to talk about the value, and maybe they're already on the same page with us. So we never even had to have that difficult conversation of, oh, well, you're not going to get all $10,000 back from these hardwood floors here, or you're not going to get all $30,000 back from this little swimming pool that you put in back here, or whatever it is. But we want to find out that information, not just so we can be more informed and better assist our client, but also, again, so we can validate their side. You're never going to get to a solution in a negotiation until you find out where the opposing party stands. And again, finding the real answer. Because a lot of time there's a lot of BS that we've got to cut through and get through to figure out, okay, what is really important? How do we figure out what is the priority? At the end of the day, what is most important for this person with whatever negotiation it is that we have. And again, these same principles can be used with your clients, whether that's a seller or a buyer. Maybe you're getting a buyer brokerage agreement signed to work with a buyer, just like you get a listing agreement signed to work with a seller. So you could be negotiating yourself and your services, or you could be negotiating on behalf of your clients. And again, the same principles apply. And this is what we need to explain to our clients when we're helping them make an offer. This is all the information that we have, and now, so maybe you're going to make an offer that's below the asking price. Why? What is your justification? What is the reasoning behind that? What have you found in the fact-finding due diligence that's important, that does actually contribute to the value, that might be the reason why that property has not yet sold? Or, again, closing, actually signing on the dotted line, or actually making the decision. Again, that's a logical thing, so it's not about the emotions. So we can't lead with emotions when we're trying to, again, seal the deal and close the deal. We have to use logic. We have to make it make sense. Someone might fall in love with this giant mansion, but if they can't make sense of how they're going to pay for it, how are they going to pay for it? And if they can't make sense of how they're going to pay for it, they're not going to do the deal. They might love it. They might be sold 100% on it. You could do a great job showing off this property. Maybe the property's so spectacular, it just sells itself. But if they can't make sense of that decision, if they can't make sense of it logically, almost every single time, people will not make that decision. So it's important to understand that difference between the emotions of the sale, which again is what make people fall in love and really like a property, but then ultimately the negotiation is typically more about the logic, the more cold, hard facts, the numbers a lot of times, because that's usually, again, what it is that we're negotiating. And not just the numbers, but the reasoning behind those numbers. So maybe we're negotiating on the price. Again, what do we have to back up? What evidence do we have? Not what emotions, because somebody's memories, somebody's attachment to their property, the things they maybe have done that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into, those are emotional things. And again, those emotional things don't always contribute or equal value. But it's the actual logical things. Again, when we have evidence. So when we try to appraise the value of a property, we look at comps. We look at evidence of other properties that have sold and use that. Because again, when we have evidence, when we have proof, it gives us ground to stand on. It gives us reasoning for why it is that we're suggesting doing whatever it is that we're doing here. And ultimately, it's not just about us. It's not just about it making sense to us. It needs to make sense to the both of us. Because if it doesn't make sense to the both of us, we're usually not going to get to we're pretty much never going to get to an agreement. And again, that's how we close. We make sense of this. We use the logic, we use the facts, we use the details. This is where things, maybe you're talking about somebody buying a property, tax benefits. Maybe it's a newer home with energy efficiency. Maybe it's a safer neighborhood. So that's more of a, safe neighborhood. That's more of an emotional type of idea. But then maybe crime rates, low crime rates. Those are cold, hard facts. That's detail that, again, helps people make a decision. And again, keep in mind the Fair Housing Act and whatnot and the protected classes of information you cannot use, but there's a lot of information you can use, like crime rates, income levels, education levels, and that type of information, if that is. But usually, again, when it comes down to negotiating the property, it's usually in relation to the price, but on top of the price, we've got more than that. We've got the earnest money deposit. And let's say we've got two identical offers, $400,000, but one of them has a $10,000 deposit and one has a $1,000 deposit. As a seller, if you're presented two offers for the same terms, except for one has a deposit that's 10 times as much, and remember, this deposit is money that you potentially get if the buyer breaches the contract. So would you rather take the $400,000 contract with a $1,000 deposit, or would you rather take the $400,000 deposit with a $10,000 deposit? And at the end of the day, when you close on this property, it still costs you the same amount. The difference is that you're just paying more money up front. You're willing to put more money on the line because you do put that money on the line where if you break the contract as the buyer, essentially the seller is entitled to that money. Now, escrow disbursement can get really sticky and complicated, especially if this is something held by a broker. There's a big portion of your pre-licensing course that goes over escrow disbursement orders and all kinds of things like that. But getting back to the basics on this of what this means to your client, because that's also another part of negotiation. If we want people on the same page, coming to an agreement, we need to make sense of it, and if we're not making things simple, it's not going to make sense. Things getting more complicated is getting you farther away from an agreement. So you also want to try to simplify and find the easiest solution possible. So you can get this done, move on, and get now repeat business from this client, referral business from this client, working your other clients. Negotiation does not have to take long. When it's done well, it can be done very quickly. And what's going to get it done much, much faster is not you talking about every last thing and boring them to death and having to go over it again because they weren't even paying attention because you're just talking so much, but finding out what's important to them, prioritizing what's really, really important, and using that information to present your case, to present your side, to present your pitch, to whatever it is that you're presenting, to present your offer. You could just make one based on an idea. You're like, all right, this sounds good. Let's send it out there and see what it says. I'll go tell this seller I'll list their house for a 6% commission and let's see if they want to do it. Now, granted, we don't sell ourselves. We don't make them want to work with us. They're probably not going to do that there. But even if they are sold on us and they do want to work with us, we might send them that agreement and they're like, oh, wow, this is a lot of money. This is a long time. This is whatever. Again, It's the logic. It's making sense of it. It's about the facts now. It's about the numbers, typically. It's about, and again, it's not always the numbers, because to a certain degree, maybe you've got somebody, so again, getting back to fact finding, what's important to them, maybe you're talking to somebody where their concern is that they could potentially do this on their own, not have to pay a commission, and ultimately save money. So by hiring you, they're potentially seeing in their head, their perspective, their side of the argument. What we need to understand of them is they think they could do this on their own and ultimately come out ahead because they do not have to pay a commission. Now, we could sit there and just say, nope, that's not true, that's not correct. Or we could again try to further understand where they're coming from. So it's obvious, okay, no realtor means no commission. That's pretty easy. But then no realtor, does that still equal a sale? Can this person really do it on their own, number one? And then number two, let's say they can do it on their own. Are they going to be able to sell it for the same price the professional would be? And then number three, do they even have time for all this here? People are busier than ever now. It doesn't really matter what your job is or what it is that you do. We're all busy doing stuff. There's a lot of stuff to do in this world right now. So we're all busy, working, playing, sleeping, enjoying. Whatever it is that we're doing in life, we're busy doing things. And so time is ultimately the most valuable commodity. It's the only thing we have a truly limited resource of. It's our most valuable asset. And so, but again, we've got to find out, what is it that matters to them? We could go on this whole lecture about how time is important, blah, 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 blah. But if they don't care about time, if they're the type of person that's got too much time on their hands, us saving them time isn't going to make sense to them. It's not going to make sense to where they're going to say yes. So that's not how we make sense of this. So how do we make sense of it? We find out what's important to them. What is the priority? What is it that what is the point of friction? What is it that's stopping us from doing business together? Maybe again, it's about the money. Maybe it's that for sale by owner specifically that thinks they can sell their property on their own and come out ahead. So let's actually use some cold, hard evidence from that. So according to the National Association of Realtors, and this would be a great thing if you're working with for sale by owners or anybody who thinks they could sell their property on their own, go find the statistic from the National Association of Realtors. But according to NAR, the National Association of Realtors, on average, when you work with a realtor, you're getting anywhere from 10 to 30% higher than what you would sell the property for on your own. So let's be conservative and say I only put 10% more in your pocket than you'd be able to get on your own. How much more would you come ahead if I'm charging you 6% and I get 10% more in your pocket? And notice how I'm doing this here. When I've zeroed in on what it is we've got to go in for, we could go in for the kill. I know that sounds intense there, but if you notice the way it is that I've poised that question, it's a question that points us towards a solution, towards closing the deal, towards closing that objection, that complaint, that concern it is that they had. We're using cold, hard evidence to validate their concern. I completely understand that, you having to pay a 6% commission here, that, you could come out potentially 6% ahead if you're not paying a commission, and that's a very common misconception. Here I have from the National Association of Realtors, a peer-reviewed study, blah, 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 that shows on average when you work with a realtor, you're getting anywhere from 10% to 30% higher. Now, I'm not going to make you a promise that I could get you 30% higher than what you'd be able to get on your own. But let's say I only get you 10% more than what you're able to get on your own. If I'm charging you 6%, how much more money is going to be in your pocket if I get 10% in your pocket for the cost of 6%? They say, oh, well, that's 4%. All right, well, you know what? You sound like you know what you're talking about. You know your stuff. Let's do it. Because if that truly was their concern, the thing that's stopping them from doing this deal, if you could logically present a solution to their problem, it's usually a done deal. And if it's not, there's more things you've got to go in there and uncover. You got to go put your detective hat back on, go back in there and diagnose again and figure out, okay, what did I miss? What do we not have? What info do we not have? Because then again, we could go in and figure that out. And so a really good, another little term it is you could, phrase it is you could use when you've got somebody, zeroed in on this of what the problem may be before you even go into resolving that question about the commission. You could ask a question such as this. Say, hey, I completely understand. Now, other than the commission, is there anything else that I've talked about or in this agreement that is a concern to you? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out, is the commission the only thing? Because if we go put all of our commission energy in solving this commission problem and then we find out there's still another problem, it's again this back and forth, and we don't want to give our clients whiplash. We want to try to extract all the information, because if you're a professional, that's what you're doing. You're going in there like James Bond, like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, and you're going in there pulling out all this information right under their noses without them even realizing how good it is that you are. That's what makes a good negotiator. You're listening to understand. You're listening to understand where it is that they're coming from, because when you understand where it is that they're coming from, you could bring them over to your side. If you don't understand where they are, how are you going to bring them to your side? You've got to first find them before you could bring them to you. So you've got to find out where their head's at, where their ideas are, and then we could start to reel them in once we've done the fact finding and again identified what is truly important. What are the deal breakers? What are the deal makers and what are the deal breakers? So I can't stress enough how important fact-finding and due diligence and trying to collect this information is. And this is for sales, this is for negotiation, this is for resolving concerns, so more of a customer service angle as well. You know, maybe you've got a complaint, an issue, a problem with a client. If you just say, hey, I'm sorry about that, it won't happen again, without actually listening to what they're even saying, are they going to be happy with you? If they say, hey, John, you know, you've been doing a really bad job. Hey, I'm sorry, I won't let that happen again. Are we good now? No, you're not going to be good because you didn't even listen to them. So you got to do the fact finding, you got to do the due diligence, you've got to figure out where it is that they're coming from. And once you've really collected all that info, that's now where you're armed with the information to state your case, to present your information in the way that's going to make the most sense. Because remember, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sense. And if we just waste our time talking about nonsense because we did not prioritize, we're not going to get the deal. We're not going to come to an agreement. Whereas if we could prioritize what is the hot button issue, what is the thing that is hanging up or stopping this deal from going through, because a lot of times it's just one little detail. It's just one little thing. But people are usually not blunt. People are usually not direct. There's this whole thing with manners and politeness and just weird psychological issues people have, or whatever it may be, that we have all these masks and all these layers and all these things that get in the way sometimes of the actual real info. And sometimes we might not even realize we're doing it ourselves. So that's where we try to put on our counselor hat, our psychologist hat, our understanding hat, our therapist hat, whatever it is that we're putting on here, again, to try to understand where they're coming from, understanding what environment, what situation it is, trying to read this from every angle and figure out, again, what is most important. And then once we've got that figured out, we go in to close the deal. Once we're armed with the information we need, we know what the problem is, we can get there and solve it. I always like to make the comparison to, say you're getting surgery. Say you're going to get surgery. You're not going to the hospital and just laying out on the table and say, all right, doc, cut me open and see what you find in there. No. That doctor's going to do a lot of due diligence. They're going to be sure that what they're about to do is what they need to do. Or at least as sure as they can be. Because sometimes, even with negotiations, we can't always be 100% sure, but as sure as we can be. So we try to get as sure as we can be, try to get as much info as we can, and then we're ready for the procedure. Then we're ready to go through. You know, again, and we're going to look at the priorities as well. You know, just like a doctor, granted I'm not a doctor, so this is probably going to sound like nonsense for anybody that's maybe from a medical background watching this here. But let's say that, you know, with a doctor, if you've got maybe you've got a sprained ankle, but you're also having a heart attack. Which one of those is more important at the time being? Obviously, the heart attack. That's what we got to prioritize. That's the big problem, because if we don't fix the heart attack, the sprained ankle is not going to matter. If we don't fix the heart attack, we don't solve that heart problem, well, it doesn't matter with that ankle anymore. So the priorities are extremely important. And sometimes somebody might know. They might come in there. Oh yeah, I have this sprained ankle here. It's weird. It's almost like the sprained ankle's causing me some chest pains too. And if we just go in there, again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not here giving medical advice. But if we just go in there and say, all right, sprained ankle, yeah, your chest pains. Well, you're you, so you know better than the professional. So yeah, that sprained ankle must be causing your chest pains. And we just focus on the sprained ankle, we might lose them. That person's probably going to die on us. It's probably why I'm not a doctor. I'm sure they don't teach that in medical school. So we got to do the due diligence. We got to do the fact finding. We've got to find out, because this person might not even know. Why? Because they're not the professional. That's us. But it's not just about, I'm the professional, I know better than you. It's, I'm the professional because I can connect the dots that you don't even see. That's what makes you a professional. It's not about knowing everything or saying everything or doing everything. It's about doing what's important for that client. And it's different for every client. And that's what makes real estate so unique. That's what makes real estate such a powerful tool for wealth creation, is the uniqueness of it. And skills such as negotiation, whether you have those skills personally or you're hiring somebody, so that's typically why somebody would hire a realtor. A lot of times they're hiring a realtor solely for their negotiation skills. And so if you, for lack of a better term, suck at negotiating with your client, well, they're not going to have the most confidence in you negotiating on their behalf. And maybe they don't realize that. Maybe they're really trying to negotiate you hard on your commission on a listing or something like that. And that's where you could bring up, hey, look, I completely understand. But I believe this commission, and based on everything it is that I say here, that this, and going through and again, selling and confirming those benefits it is that you're providing. But ultimately, I believe in the commission rate it is that I'm charging here. And at the end of the day, we're doing all this, and this is the cost, and I don't have to charge you anything. I won't charge you anything unless we get to a closing with a contract that's acceptable to you. And we're positioning this here to where we're trying to close this. So you can notice how when I'm saying these things, I'm saying them almost with that inflection of all right, this is it. This is the solution. This is the end of it right here. And that works if you're doing that one time, maybe two times. If you have to keep doing it again and again and again and again and again and again because you didn't do all your fact finding, you didn't prioritize, you didn't find out what's important, again, it's a lot harder to get to a deal. And when there's fatigue, when there's so much of the back and forth, that's what wears people out. Whereas if we go in there strongly presenting our offer, and again, going back to we're going to be negotiating on their behalf, it's like, look here, at everything it is that I'm doing for you here, yes, you could probably I know you could get a real estate agent for less out there. But is that agent that may be charging less going to put as much money in your pocket that I can? As quickly as I can, as easily as I can. But maybe it's not about another agent. Maybe it truly is maybe a budgetary concern. Maybe the concern is that they don't know how much money they'll walk away with. Well, then maybe it's we're shooting ourselves in the foot negotiating over commission when they don't even know how much money they're going to walk away with, because we could figure out that bottom line number. And ultimately, yes, for us, the commission is what's important. But the negotiation is not about what's important to us. It's about what's important to the client. And how do we try to merge what's important with the client with what's really important to us? And again, that's where we've got to sometimes pick and choose. We've got to prioritize, pick our battles, figure out where it lines up the best. But when your client sees you with some negotiation skills, especially if you present that in the way that, look, I'm going to negotiate just as hard on your behalf, whether we're working with a buyer, whether we're working with a seller. And matter of fact, I'll probably negotiate even better because I'll be negotiating on your behalf rather than negotiating on behalf of myself. But maybe they don't care about negotiations. Maybe they think they're an expert negotiator. If they think they're an expert negotiator, do they need to hire an expert negotiator? No. But maybe they know nothing about marketing, and you know a lot about marketing real estate, so maybe that's your angle. But again, not everything is going to be the same important things for everyone. Some people might say, oh yeah, professional photographer, video tours, all that stuff, yeah, I need that. Whereas another person, they might be really gung-ho on open houses if we're talking about a seller with listings. Or maybe a buyer, they're most concerned with understanding this process, especially for maybe somebody who's a first-time home buyer, or maybe for somebody who has a home right now. They're looking for somebody that could help most easily bridge the gap between their current home and their next home. But if we don't find out what's important, we're not going to win the negotiation. We're not going to get to a deal, usually, if we don't do the fact-finding and due diligence. You usually can, but it takes a lot longer. It's a lot more frustrating and usually doesn't end out where it is that you want, just because there's so much more. When we handle this conversation, this situation, this negotiation in a quick, concise manner that closes this loop, that's what, again, helps not only make it a win-win, but also where everybody's walking away from the transaction feeling like they didn't waste their time. That yes, it cost them some money. Everything costs money in the world. But at the end of the day, they feel that they're validated and their concerns have merged with ultimately what it is we're trying to do here. And again, that could be with you, with your client. This could be negotiating on behalf of a buyer for helping them find a home. Maybe you're helping somebody negotiate rent in a rental. Maybe you're negotiating the purchase of your next car. You know, there's so many things that can be negotiated and a lot of this stuff, it relates a lot back to just sales skills. So there's not a whole lot of this stuff that's different. For those of you that are already well-versed on sales, you can kind of see how a lot of those same sales principles, especially the fact-finding and due diligence portion of it, ties directly in with negotiation as well. So look, that's about all the time it is that we've got for today. So if you've liked today's show on negotiation, you want more of these advanced topics on how to be the best real estate professional is that you can be, hit that thumbs up button, and that way we know that you guys like this episode and we'll do more like that, because that's how we figure out what content to do next, is what information do you guys need to help grow your real estate business. So if you like today's episode, hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed, so that way whenever it is that we've got new content, you're not missing out, because we've got videos that we put out every single week with information to grow your real estate business. So hit that little bell icon, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube. If you're on our website, drop your email in there and we'll actually email you the shows every single week when we do them. And that way, again, we want to set you up to have the most successful real estate career. As whatever it is you're trying to get out of real estate, maybe you're trying to do real estate part-time, just make some money on the side, maybe eventually transition to full-time, or maybe just stay part-time because you love what you do currently, you just want to make some extra money. Or maybe you're trying to be the next top agent and you want to jump right into doing real estate full-time. Maybe you want to be a multi-million-dollar producer, maybe you just want to earn some referral fees. Whatever it is you want to make out of real estate, there's so many opportunities, there's so much potential. Even from the perspective of just buying your own home and being an investor, having a real estate license unlocks a lot of benefits and opportunities that you don't have as a member of the general public. So if you're interested in starting a real estate career, maybe you've already got your real estate license and you want to take the post-licensing course so you can maybe learn more about negotiation, more about submitting offers, more about running your real estate business. That's what you learn about more so in post-licensing. Pre-licensing is a lot of laws and rules for the exam. Post-licensing is kind of like a boot camp of here's how the basic principles of real estate work. Here's how real estate business is practiced. Now that you have a real estate license, this is how you could use it to make some money. So that's your post-licensing course that's required before your first renewal deadline. If you want to get a broker license, we've got those courses. We've got broker post-licensing, and we also have your continuing education that you need to complete. And on top of all that, we're here every week to try to go above and beyond, to again provide you additional info, more impromptu, easy to join in format, but at the end of the day, we want to help you achieve a successful real estate career, whatever your definition of that success level is. So let us know how it is that we can help you. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that they can. The phone number is 813-333-2676. Again, that's 813-333-2676. You can also find us online at tampaschool.com. Again, that's tampaschool.com. Or again, just give us a call. You can text us 813-333-2676. That's about all the time it is that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe so that way you get notifications. We'll be back on Wednesday for Ask the Instructor. Thank you guys and have a great weekend. Are you studying for your Florida real estate exam? If you are, you need to check out our Pass First Try strategy. You're going to love this. It's 4 steps that we break down the process to study for your Florida real estate exam. So you're set up to pass your Florida real estate exam because that's what you're studying for, right? To pass your exam. It's 4 steps. Number 1, you learn the information. You've got to learn this to be able to pass the exam, but it doesn't stop at learning. Step 2, you've got to reinforce the basic, simple, key concepts. As you learn this information, keep reviewing the simple things. You don't need to know everything, but you got to review these basic key concepts. Step 3, you've got to test your knowledge. The exam's going to test your knowledge, so if you don't test your knowledge in advance, you won't find out if you know what you think you know until you take the exam. And then step 4 is be confident and prepared, because even if you know this material, you need to be confident that you know the material. Check out the full strategy at passfirsttry.com. That's passfirsttry.com. State of real estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Have you completed your post-licensing education yet? Look, I know you're probably thinking, hey, it's not my renewal deadline, I don't need to do post-licensing yet, but look, here's why you want to do post-licensing as soon as you've got your real estate license, as soon as you're able to take post-licensing. It's not just another course about arbitrary laws that you're never going to use again. It's about real-world, usable topics that'll help you grow your real estate business, to help you take it to the next level. Look, let me ask you this one question. If this course helps you close just one deal, if you get one extra deal from post-licensing, is it worth the investment? I'd say it is. We get paid pretty well, so one deal means a lot of money. Check out postflorida.com. That's postflorida.com for the full details about post-licensing. State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam. State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate.